Welcome, everybody. Tonight we are joined by a very special guest, Florent Coupeau, who is the CEO of Nuts Publishing. Florent, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you for having me.
And
Yeah.
he is the CEO of Nuts Publishing, which, if you don't know, is a wargame publisher based in France. Correct me if I'm saying anything incorrect. They've got a number
I
of
think that.
new and very spiffy things out, including but not limited to Stalingrad Roads, which they were kind enough to send me a copy of. Florent, why don't we start out by telling us the story of Nuts Publishing? How did it get started? How long has it been going on? And what kinds of games do you like to produce?
Uh-huh. Um, I hope I won't talk too much because we're actually, pretty old company. It's been created in 2011 by four guys, and at one point, well, they released. I think the first game was Phantom Fury, the first
Mm-hmm.
edition. Then some 1918. Then a few others. The last one before I took over was Urban Operations. I arrived at that time, and so I bought the company out of these four guys. They all stayed in the company, so yeah, they're friends. So we continue to be associates, but it became my main job. So we had to change a little bit how it was done, so I could make a living out of it. So we continued, designing and producing and selling war games. At the same time, we also did Eurogames. Um, we started with a few localizations for Eurogames. They were successful, so we continued that way. We now make our own. Um, People may have heard about Mini Rogue, and the next one in 2 weeks will be Diluvium. But at the same time, we keep, and because that's really the DNA of our company, we keep doing war games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And since then, yeah, while we were making Euro games, we like it, but it's more like a living and also learning from it to take what we learn from the Euro games industry and components to put them into war games to make them look better, uh, better components. For example, we released 300, which was a smaller crossover war game, and it has a magnetic opening, and yeah, it's just cooler a little bit. Yeah, so doesn't change anything to the game. It has to be great, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, having a nice box in your hand is always, yeah, a cool thing.
Mm-hmm. When did you take over as CEO?
Sorry, yeah, 2016, at the end of 2016,
Okay.
so it's already almost 8 years now.
Okay. And Nuts has it had, I think, increasing visibility here in the U.S., where we have traditionally not had tremendous visibility for European wargame publishers, if you know what I mean. So,
Yeah.
what strides have been made to try to get your products into the hands of waiting impatiently U.S. customers, myself included?
Yeah.
So what I'm asking is, if you're in the U.S., where can we buy Nuts Publishing games besides Noble Knight, which is where I picked up a couple so
Yeah, and
far?
novel light games, obviously, but not only. To give you an example, one of the last releases we had, so months ago, even less than that, Italia 1917, 1918.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I was completely off target because to be honest, I sent 250 copies to the US through our distributor, RS Games. It
Mm-hmm.
was not enough. Shops were asking for the double. So yeah, we may have more visibility, but I don't. I mean, I don't realize it. So I need to change my numbers for sure. So probably next time for the next war game everywhere. I mean, probably in any shop you'll be able to order it because yeah, we are there in North America through Aris Games. So yeah, obviously Noble Knight Games has our games.
Hmm.
If not, you can always order from our website. Of course, you have to pay postage on top of it, but it's like, I think for a war game, one war game or two war games doesn't change anything. It must be $20, something like that.
That's not that
That's not,
bad,
no,
to
and
be honest.
you won't have any custom fees. I need to add that on top. So it's not that bad, but we know that still, it might be a problem, overseas. From our point of view, it's overseas. So yeah, be sure that we are trying to get more and more visibility and availability for all our games. It's starting to be better, but yeah, probably the next one will be even more broadly available.
So just availability, presumably through Ares, through the U.S. distribution chain for games in general, does probably mean that your games are available through Alliance and therefore probably through basically every game store in the
Exactly.
country, at least by special order. So
Yeah, you're right. It's Ares goes through Alliance, so yeah, exactly.
well, if you're only going to go through one U.S. distributor, it's going to be Alliance. If you're selling games anyway, because that was when I was more directly involved in gaming on the business side, which has been a long time. Alliance was the biggest distributor with the most clout and market power, and that appears to still be the case as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that's what I heard also. Even though, there could be other possibilities for us, but I mean, Ares and Alliance are doing a good
Mhm.
job as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, no need to
So
change for now.
So, for those of us unfortunates trapped here in the United States, tell us a little bit about the wargaming scene in France, because
Yeah.
there's what looks to me like a pretty thriving scene over there. There are a number of publishers doing terrific work, and you've got a couple of conventions as well.
Yeah. Um, so for companies, there are indeed quite a few because there are that's publishing, of course, but there is Exesim, who
Hmm.
publishes like one game a year, one game every 18 months, but always very high quality,
Hmm.
very good products. I think one of the latest being Great War Commander and its expansion. They also released previously Liberty Roads and
Hmm.
Victory Roads and
Hmm.
a few others. Another one that I think is pretty popular in the US is Shakos,
Hmm.
because they released Napoleon 1806, '07, and
Hmm.
I think Waterloo 1917. They're also very active. They are distributed through GMT Games, I believe.
Hmm. That's
Uh,
pretty recent news, I believe.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
you
it's
could
good.
get Shako stuff. Now I haven't seen any. Well, I've seen it, but I haven't played any of the Shakos games, nor do I own any. It's another one of those things that I need to explore still.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the previous Hexasim titles, Liberty Roads and Victory Roads. So tell us about Stalingrad Roads. I understand that it uses a relatively similar system, and from what
Yeah,
I've looked at so far, it looks pretty slick.
yeah. So just about why it changed these publishers. It's just because one of my associates is actually the designer of Stalingrad Roads and the
Okay.
whole road series. So Liberty Roads was a pretty long time ago, before I think they founded Nuts Publishing.
Hmm.
The second one was already signed, and they didn't want to. I mean, we're all friends more in this industry in France, at least. So there was no point in breaking the contract or anything. So Exesim published Victory Roads, and so the third one, Stalingrad Roads, which was, I don't know, published probably 15 years later, 12 at least. So
Something like that, yeah.
now, yeah, it's published under Nuts Publishing's name. So the design, the idea behind this whole series is to have one set of rule that Nicolas is slightly changing, but only very slightly. If you have played Liberty Roads, I mean, probably 75% of the rules are the same. You'll see the same spirit. I would say the main difference is that it's more dynamic from both sides, because during a turn, well, at least during a scenario, both players will have their time of attacking and defending. So there's more movement. It's less like a little bit static for the German side on Liberty Roads, which is a game I love, but obviously he's on the defensive.
Hmm.
Here, it's much less true, and not counting that there are 5 scenarios and a campaign.
Hmm.
So lots of different situations. And I remember Nicola before the show told me that the next, probably in 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know, but then next one in this series would be about probably Operation Typhoon.
Hmm.
But we'll first need to focus on Stalingrad Road, and then we'll see next. But yeah, it'll
I'm
be
all over
probably
that. I love that topic anyway. I've got a number of games on it, so you could count me in on that particular one.
okay.
And I happened to have encountered one of the fellas who did the translation for Stalingrad Roads at WBC about a month ago. And I
Okay.
had a lengthy conversation about the game with him, and left that conversation both impressed with what I saw and excited because I knew it was coming from across the ocean. So it did eventually arrive, and around the time that you see this interview, viewers, you will also see the unboxing video for Stalingrad Roads. But I'm pretty impressed with what I see so far. And I'm not less impressed with Italia 1917 to 18.
Yeah, Italy is from my perspective a pretty strange project, in the fact that we started this project when I bought the company, so it was 8 years ago. And meanwhile, well, shit happens, like the graphic designer going to Thailand out of nowhere and disappearing all of a sudden, and all of stuff like that. So, but well, I liked this project so much, and I knew the designer had put so much effort, energy, knowledge into the game. I mean, he speaks Italian. He checked all the data from all the Austro-Hungarian, older battles. That it would have been a shame, really, not to release this game. But it was really hard, I must say. At the end of the line, I'm very proud of what we released. There are a few mistakes here and there, but I think it's just a card that the title is not the right one. And I can remember there's a scenario where there's a couple of things, but very little. Everything for me, it's really like the final game on this front. And again, because it's 1918 and 1917, there is a lot of movement. Don't expect huge trenches and artillery barrage. No, there's a lot of movement all the time, and both sides, depending on the scenario, will be really on the edge of losing
Mm-hmm.
or attacking at the same time. Depends on where you are in the front.
Mm-hmm. Now
Sometimes.
you've also, at least this year, at least according to Board Game Geek, also released a second edition of Phantom Fury as well. Was that this year?
Yeah. It was actually because of delays. It was actually exactly at the same time as Italia. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a tactical card game. Am I characterizing that correctly?
No, it's a solo game. No,
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge. Well, it's one uh, A1 map. I mean, pretty big map
Mm-hmm.
about the Battle of Fallujah.
Mm.
And as the Marine player, you have to sweep out all the insurgents in a certain number of turns. I think it's 16 turns, and you have to choose if you go from top to down or use your tanks or drones, because they were drones already at that time. It's a lot of different choices, because you have to go from blocks to blocks. You never know what's in front of you, but you have to be fast. Uh, on the other side of the map. It was very, very popular. I think, yeah, Nuts Publishing sold. It was the first game, so they printed 1,000 copies, and it sold out in, I think, less than 6 months. When they were completely unknown. Yeah, they were really, it was really the first game, a French company, and so it took us a long, long time to reprint the game for many reasons. For the first one being that we had so many projects at the time that it was not, a priority. And at one point, the designer, being a very close friend of mine, we met and said, "Yeah, do you have time now to work on it?" I said, "Yeah. Why not? Okay, I got a graphic designer who's doing great work, so let's do that." And so it's almost the same game, except two variants with population and some tweaks about the insurgents. And all the graphics are newer, a little bit neater, but they were already great at the time, but just a little bit better, more clear, I think.
And of course, this is actually, you foresaw the question I was going to ask, which was what changes were made between the first edition and this new printing. And of course, this follows up on the topic of modern topics with We Are Coming Nineveh, which was one of last year's releases from Nuts, and that has been received extremely warmly by the Wargaming public and the Charles S. Roberts Awards.
Yes, it's funny how we like, and it's not I don't know, I don't try to find games on modern warfare, but it just happens that for this particular project, We Are Coming in Nineveh, we were extremely lucky that Rex Brennan contacted us, and because, well, in his class they took urban operation as a model to make Nineveh, so we thought, okay, let's contact Nuts Publishing, and we thought the game was just great. Lots of good ideas, and what was cool, it was two students making the game. So of course they also had fresh ideas, a different look at war games, because especially Juliette was not a war game at all. So we thought, okay, that's really, really cool to have this kind of design coming to us. Let's put all we have into it. And yeah, I really do like this game very, very much. As a game, as a project, because everything went well. All the people involved were really great to work with. So yeah, it was really, and I'm glad it worked. I mean, on the other side, for players, that they liked it.
I have not had the chance to play it yet, but I have gone out of my way to talk to a bunch of people who have, and every one of them says it's dynamite. So I look forward to actually getting it onto a table at some point, hopefully in the not terribly distant future. Time, of course, always being the limiting factor, as you've mentioned several times. So looking forward into the next couple of years for Nuts Publishing, what projects do you have in the works that you are prepared to talk about, at least very briefly today, if any? You can't tell me no, you're not prepared to talk about that yet, but if you want to, we can.
We have so many that I have to look at my screen, because I think the first one is actually not a war game. It's a book about wargame. It's going to be called Euro War Games. So it's kind of a state of the state in Europe about war games. So it's very much academic. I think it's 136 pages, something like that. So it's a pretty big book. It should go on pre-order, probably on Kickstarter or something like that, or at least a crowdfunding platform in November. The book is ready, completely ready. It's just, and printing a book compared to We Are Coming in Nineveh, it's extremely simple for us. So we're doing the pre-order, and 2 weeks later, we're sending we are pushing the button print, and probably within it's probably going to be printed in Spain, so very close to us. So within 2 months we have the game, and it's sent to everyone in the world. So that one is completely finished. We have. I'm looking at what's next. Yeah, of course, the second edition of Urban Operations. The game has been very popular. We have a high demand for it, but we took our time because we wanted to clarify everything. Everything was working well, and it's still working well, but there was clarifications to be made. And because it's a pretty big game, it took us quite some time. But I can announce that pretty much right after it's being published, so probably before summer next year, we'll have an expansion about, I think it's 4 to 6 scenarios about Jerusalem in 67 and 73, 1967 and 1973. Same maps, mostly same components, but a few unit cards that will differ and a few blocks. So that's also going to be much quicker than Urban Operations Second Edition itself. Now, the third one in terms of our planning is called Guerre Éclair, which is Lightning War in French. It's a crossover war game like 300 and Port Arthur, done again by the same Japanese designer, Yasushi Nakakuro. Very small box, A5, so something really, really short. 45 minutes about the campaign of France. We hope to release it in March, April next year, and lots of great ideas. I mean, Yasushi is a great, great designer. I could talk forever about these great ideas. Just one of them for Guerre Éclair. So it's a campaign of France, and at the start of the game, you have 4 different objectives for the German to allow him to win. It's occupy Paris, occupy the 3 northern ports of France, occupy Benelux, so Belgium and Luxembourg and the Netherlands, or the last one being occupy the Maginot Line. You shuffle the 4, you take one, show it to both players, put it next to each other, and if at the end of turn 5, because there's only 5 turns, if you get it, the Germans get it, he wins. Then you take another one, but only the German knows it, puts it face down, and you begin to play. And only that, there were other nice ideas, but only that trick puts a tension on the French player that is just amazing, because he knows one objective, but doesn't know the other one. So he has to be, always, sorry, I forgot the word in English. Very careful and cautious about where to put his units, because, well, of course, the north of France and Paris are completely of the opposite. So, yeah, and when there's a breakthrough by the German, where do I go? Is he luring me by going that way? Or so it's really, really a great game. Then we have a card-driven game called The Coldest Winter on the Russo-Finnish War in 1940. This one is much bigger. I mean, it's the size of Stalingrad Roads. Again, it's a little bit like Path of Glory, but designed by a Finnish designer. Lots of chrome, but the game plays fast. The chrome is not taking over. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's really the right balance, I think. We got another one. Let me check if it's well advanced, because it's not I don't need to speak about things that. Oh yeah, one I can talk about is called Supremacy 2050. This one is designed by the same designer as Fitna, Pierre Razou, which works for a think tank, a French think tank about all the Middle East, politics. And this one, you have the global map of the world as it is now. You have 4 major powers, so the USA, China, European Union, and Russia. And all these 4 cannot fight each other. It's how it starts. You cannot do that. So you'll fight by, in the gray areas, for straits, always through proxies, but it's meant to be a tool, like a lot of our games, like Co-ops is a tool, Fitna is a tool, Urban Operation is a tool. It's also a game, but it's also a tool for armies around the world. Supremacy is a little bit like that, but on a higher scale, really global scale. Again, great game. It's been play tested actually in Toulon, and Toulon is in the south of France, one of the 2 major naval base for the French, and
I believe my Napoleonic viewers will be familiar with it.
And Pierre is playtesting with a lot of different type of people, but from just I don't know how to say that, but from admirals to politicians to journalists, and getting all this feedback. And I expect it to be really fun and fairly quick. I think the game is there's only 2 phases, one from now to 2035, and then 2035 to 2050. And of course, there's it's perspective, so you also have a race to space, but it's different from Triad Struggle. Now you can go to Mars and even further. It's really fun.
There's a number of really fascinating titles you've got lined up here. In that case, I want to actually ask questions about the book, though. Well, actually, let me start out slightly differently. Is because you mentioned Kickstarter for the book. Is that a route that you, as a company, plan to take with future wargame releases as well? Using Kickstarter is what I mean.
Yeah. We use crowdfunding platforms mostly for our Eurogames. For wargames, I believe I don't know, it works for the US probably audience, much less for the European audience. To be honest, I'm thinking about it. I haven't decided yet. For Eurogames, it's easy. It's smaller. We can make a lot of stretch goals and whatever, and we need the promotion, the visibility brought by this international platforms. For wargames, we might develop it, have more games on it, but it takes quite a lot of time to do a good campaign. Go on one of our campaign of Mini Rogue, and you'll see that we got like 4,000-5,000 backers, and to deal with all these people, it's a lot of time and a lot of energy. Of course, with wargaming, it's going to be 200, 300, but still, it's still time to put in one project. So I don't know. Maybe for the smaller ones like Guerre Éclair, the crossover war games, maybe. I'm not sure I want to do some kind of pre-order on Kickstarter, which is fine. I mean, other companies are doing it, and it seems to work for them. but yeah, and there's also, if I go into more technical details, Kickstarter allows a company to put, I think it's up to 4 projects undelivered, where after that they stop you. Where on GameFound, for example, you can have any number. But I have no idea how US wargamers would react if we put a project on GameFound. It's exactly the same. Yeah, I mean, that's just a crowdfunding platform. But of course, when you're not used to it, you're like, GameFound, what is that? Yeah. In reality, it's just, it's in Poland, and it's same as Kickstarter, except that it's not the same country. But apart from that, yeah.
And we've seen a couple of wargaming crowdfunding campaigns run through GameFound now, so it's not like it's totally foreign, but American viewers are probably not used to it. This was where I would otherwise ask if you have U.S.-friendly shipping for the benefit of folks in the U.S., but based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like you've got that figured out as well.
Well, we have several options, because we could use our hub through Alliance. We could also use our hub because we're as French from France. We have strong connections with Ardwulf Games, which is a French-Canadian company. I think the biggest one in Quebec, and they have also fairly good deals when they want to ship games to the US. So we could also try that.
Okay. But there will be options for folks in the U.S. that say are interested in the book, like myself, for example. Is that by a single author, or is it a compendium of articles by different authors?
There are 17 authors. Yeah.
Okay.
One of them being Volker Runke.
I'm shocked to hear Volko's name brought up. I'm not at all shocked. I'm being completely insincere when I say that.
Yeah, but it's funny because it goes from sometimes experiences from people, explaining how the Italian market works, or how the Spanish players are playing, to very detailed with a lot of charts and graphics articles. It's pretty diverse, but I find it very, very interesting. And probably for the US wargamers, it will be completely different for them. Really something that I myself, even as a French, I didn't know, or I had misconceptions. Clearly. It's really interesting.
I mean, there's an opportunity there to open some eyes in the United States too, about Nuts Publishing and the other vibrant wargaming scenes in Europe, because France is not different in this respect than Spain or Italy, at least. There are multiple wargaming publishers in Poland, for example. I did a whole show on this, and I only began to scratch the surface of the wargaming scene that is happening in continental Europe. A little less, feels like less so in the UK, but what do I know? Maybe the British just aren't telling me anything.
No, it's strange. From what I know, in the UK, they are more into miniatures.
That's my understanding.
There are a few X-Encounters publishing houses, but it's not as vivid as continental Europe.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, France, Italy, and Spain, between them, are making up the slack that the British are leaving in this particular department, and I'm guessing you folks are all okay with that. So.
Well, you should not forget. There are actually 2 German companies that are very, very dynamic. Vuku Simulation and Sound of Drums. They're. I'm going to the show of Essenspiel in 2 weeks, and they'll be there. And even though it's a Eurogame show, they'll show their war games. They'll be there. So it's. I feel we have a great time overall. Lots of war games, and what I think is cool is that, of course, we have a different view on things. it's especially true if you take, I don't know, if you take just Battle of Waterloo, yeah, we'll do it with our French eyes differently than a US or a UK company, and that's what's cool. Yeah, you play
That
both.
is awesome. I was pleased enough to see a game in development at WBC about the American Revolution from the French perspective, which I was like, that's fantastic. I've never seen that before. And the same applies when we got a couple of American Revolution. I mean, this is traditional American topic, right?
Yeah.
So Americans might feel a little weird about non-Americans doing games on this, but I think that's incredibly valuable. We can glean new insights to see things from the British perspective or the French perspective or whoever, and Waterloo would be no exception in that regard. I mean, I don't imagine there has never been a French-designed Waterloo game. I'm sure Frederick Bay has done one, for example. I would assume so.
Yeah, he did.
So
Yeah.
I don't have it, but I'm sure he has.
I published it. At least there's one scenario in because something I didn't talk about. We have the French magazine Vae Victis.
Great magazine.
Yeah, which I think is really some kind of cornerstone of our hobby. Yeah, it's been there since I think
since the 90s at least, the early 90s at that.
1994.
Yeah.
So no, it's really cool, and I think there must be a few thousand wargame players. I mean, hardcore, X encounters. Of course, there are a lot more if you count all the people that like historical Euro games or war games. You're like 300, but also like Undaunted. So it's cool. I'm pleased to see that now. Yeah, and we're trying. We release games like 300 or Port Arthur, just to bring new blood into the hobby. And
I was about to ask that too. So you're doing a great job at anticipating my questions, so I don't have to ask them.
Well, we're trying. I know, for example, in France, in all the major shows in our country, we're doing what we call Carré Histoire, so History Square, and we gather a few publishers, and we show, and it's it's like a Gen Con. It's imagine Gen Con, and you have probably 100 meters square or 200 meters square, and only war games there. So of course people come and go, look, and suddenly, oh, that's funny. Okay, let's see. Is it complicated? It's 45 minutes, yeah. And then from there, you go to something else that is 2 hours, with miniatures, for example, like Memoir 44 or, And you grab them. And that's what we're trying. We are doing the big games like Italia or Stalingrad Roads, but we need to get new blood in. So that's also one of our mission in a way.
No argument from me. Oh, and I would imagine there would be general agreement among wargamers that new blood would be fantastic. Any plans to establish some kind of presence at U.S. conventions, perhaps Consim World Expo or WBC? Might seem logical. I think more so than Gen Con or Origins.
Yeah, I go to Gen Con once in a while, but I thought about it. For now, I don't think we have the shoulders to do it. But for example, I'll be in San Diego, ISCON.
Outstanding. So will I. How about that?
Oh, okay.
So, of course, it's a little bit less of a flight for me than it is for you. But
19 hours, I think, on the way there.
No, thank you. I will whine and complain the entire 5-hour flight that I have to endure. So,
well, think about me, going going nuts.
I will try to be stoic in that way.
It's true that I'd like to expand, if it's the right word, there. I mean, at least show a little bit more our games there, because I think yeah, it's worth it. It's, I think people will like our war games. Now, yeah, it's. I must admit, we have so many things to do, too many projects probably. so,
Hmm.
so I haven't got time to focus really on it. But it's true. We should. Yeah. Maybe in the
What do
coming
you? So, what are you playing right now? Let me ask that question from Nuts Publishing that's got you particularly excited. That could be something that's just released or a playtest, something that's still in playtest or whatever.
Right now, I'm finishing Clair, and it's funny because I must have played that game for, I don't know, 100 times now, and I still find it great. Yeah, so many cool ideas. But I one thing, one game, I'm not developing it, but I'm seeing it. It's because we talked a lot about games that are um mostly on modern warfare.
Hmm.
We actually have a game that is nearly ready, or two games that are nearly ready about antiquity. One is the second edition of Sword of Rome, first published by GMT Games.
Hmm.
So this one is going well on the way. It's really, yeah, it's really, I'm pleased with the development. And then the second is Theoderati, so the end of the Roman Empire. This one is almost done. I think Joe is just, yeah, refining the solo mode, but it's a 1 to 4 player game. One Roman, the others are Visigoth, Alamans, and the Huns. And at one point, they have to choose for the barbarians. They have to choose to become kingdoms, and they have to, yeah, check at what time it's best, because it's the how you gain victory points is completely different. When you're barbarians, of course, you raid everywhere. Yeah, but
Hmm.
once the Roman Empire is, empty, then you need to switch to kingdoms where you can get victory points from the taxes. But if you raid everything, people are just gone or disappeared. So you have to get a balance between that. And for the Roman Empire, it's almost the same. You have to choose at one point where you have to switch to Franks. We took over the north of France and then the whole of France.
Hmm.
And yeah, again, it's funny to see how 2, 3, 4 players around the table have different thoughts about when they need to switch. So it's also a cool game.
That
Like
sounds fascinating,
entry
by the
hours.
way. I'm all over that.
Yeah, well, I could, well, I only have the prototype, but when I have the final art, I can send it to you.
Well, I would be delighted to have you back on to talk about that once you are ready to do so.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. We
Okay.
can absolutely have you back on.
Great. Great.
But I think that's probably good for tonight. I want to say thanks so much for the interview, and thanks for sending me a couple of very impressive looking games from Nuts, and both of which are like
Great.
completely in my wheelhouse as well. And I'd love to uh, give U.S. wargamers, where we have had a thriving wargame community for 50 plus years now,
Yeah.
a little more of some visibility on the scene in Europe, which is producing a lot of really impressive stuff. I'm also super interested in the book, by the way. So once you guys are ready to do that Kickstarter, let me know, and we can have some folks on to talk about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. It's yeah. I mean, I'm ready to do any kind of project, as long as it's interesting and
Hmm.
different from the others. I rarely do the same thing. It's I like series. It's not the problem, but if I've done a game, I don't know. Let's say like Nineveh. Um, yeah, I need to do something else as the next project. Yeah, always do
Fair.
something different.
Absolutely fair. Well, once again, thanks so much for doing this evening, and if nothing else, I will see you in not very many weeks
No, it's
now
true.
in San Diego, which will be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for having me again. Yeah.
Thanks
Great.
so much.
Massive thanks to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, whose support and encouragement make what we do at Ardwulf's Lair possible. Thank you, patrons. Links to help support the channel are in the video description, so check out the Patreon, the Ko-Fi, and the merch store where you can get snazzy Ardwulf's Lair t-shirts, drinking vessels, and other cool swag. There is also an affiliate link for Noble Knight Games in the video description. If you buy stuff through that affiliate link, it helps us support the channel with Noble Knight store credit. Thank you, Noble Knight. Until next time, thanks for watching, and happy gaming.